What's up, everybody? As promised, here's an update on our ninja build, dual-wield rogue assassin up to level 15. A few things I learned since the last video. A little late and kind of slow, but hey, I'll pass them along to you, so maybe you can capitalize on them a little earlier if you're keeping up with this build. At least give you a few ideas, maybe, right? Now, before getting into the build itself, I want to pass along this one cool thing I found. Flank attack? This is becoming like the Swiss Army knife of this build. Not only do you get a free hit and a free stealth out of it when it's upgraded, but you can also pass through those stupid AoE mini nukes that the bears let off when they stomp their front paws. It essentially lets you pass through unchecked, and even if you do take a hit, you essentially just get a knockdown. You can avoid most of the damage. It's actually really nifty. All right, now, since the last video, essentially what I've done is I've, of course, want to buff my critical hit chance, right? But I've been looking for things to compensate for stamina, okay? Because I was starting to have a little bit of a problem with stamina, and I unlocked my specialist tree, and I had even more abilities at my disposal. And so I need the stamina pool there for it, all right? So anything that could buff stamina is really good for me. All right, now my Spec Tree for itself, there's hidden blades. We'll get into those in a second. You have this. I was never here. This is amazing. All right, essentially when you kill an enemy, your stealth goes on immediate cooldown. And so if you're fighting mobs, like say archers in the back of a big mob battle, you can go from target to target as long as you can essentially one-hit them and stay in stealth indefinitely. All right, now this Knife in the Shadows is like a foundation block to this build. Is every hit in stealth is a critical, period. And you're talking Twin Fangs, maybe even Death Blow if we get into that later. Hidden Blades coming out of stealth, all criticals, okay? All right, so let's look at this. Mark of Death. Now check this out. This really provides the fun factor for this build. All right, not only are you kind of like a ninja, right? But you can really capitalize on your ninja stealthiness, all right? By taking Mark for Death, and you can start coming up with combos. I'm gonna give you a very basic combo here, but I guess the options are endless, infinite of the different combos you might be able to come up with. All right, check it out. Say I hit an enemy. I'll take this boss mage, for example, right? Hit him with that. All right, then go into stealth first, all right, considering my passive, that any hit in stealth is a critical. Hit him with throwing blades, all right, and then when I trigger Mark of Death, I get all that damage I just did stacked and throw it right on top, like icing on the cake. Okay, as soon as you trigger that, it's like bonus damage. And now imagine the combos you can come up with, like go for flank attack. Well, with the upgrade, you get automatic stealth, right? And then follow it up with the Twin Fangs, right? And that's going to be an automatic critical while Mark of Death is active. And if you can throw in another throwing blades on top of that before you trigger Mark of Death, you get even more damage there. And if you can throw in a stealth and then the throwing blades, and then, if you can fit all that in there, but you're going to need the stamina pool for it. I'd strongly recommend maybe a superb stamina amulet if you know where to get one. I have an enhanced one that I bought from the Keep in the Western approach from the merchant there. Enhanced stamina, enhanced focus belts. Another cool item that they were selling. But I have that, but it only gives extra 25 stamina. Figure some of these abilities cost like 60, Stealth is relatively cheap. It's only like, I think, 20, and Mark of Death only costs like 10, but like Twin Fangs, I think it's 60. Throwing Blades is 60 or 65, something like that. And now you can get armor and equipment later to reduce the cost of that a lot. Where an ability costs, what's like 7.5% less stamina to cast and things like that. All right, so you could factor that in there and really start pulling off some really neat combos. Remember, Mark of Death is only active for like 8 seconds though. So you have to pull it off, you have to get comfortable with your buttons, and put them off in a certain order and be able to trigger Mark for Death before that 8-second threshold and get some nice, tasty bonus damage from all those sexy criticals. Now, I want to talk about the party build as a whole. Just like with my warrior build, I'm going to preach this because it's effective, all right? Pass this along to you guys and take it for what it's worth and hopefully at least get some ideas out of it. But if you're following along, I think you'd really be happy with this particular theory, or whatever you want to call it, is that assign your entire party to a job, right? And picture it like a body, with 2 arms and 2 legs, okay? And then, each member of your party is performing their particular function. Right arm, left left leg type of thing. Don't ask each member to be the whole body. Ask them to do their thing. Your support mage, be that support mage. Your DPS mage, be that DPS mage. Your tank, friggin' tank for all you're worth. Take damage. That's your job over there. I don't need you to be a ninja. I don't need you to be a healer. I don't need you to be anything but just a tank. Sit over there and take those hits like a champ, and you know, let the rest of the team do their job. All right, and so keeping that whole principle in mind, the way I'm going to gear this party, and this is something that, like I say, I've learned late because I'm slow, but I see it as being truly effective, is that each one of your party members has skills that can complement the rest of the party if you kind of put them all in line. For example, you have Dorian can cast fear or terror on enemies, right? Now, those enemies can take bonus damage once they're terrified, all right? Solus can weaken those enemies, all right, to where they take more damage, at least from his attacks. I don't know if he has a buff for the whole party. I don't think so. But at least from, you know, at least from his own, all right? And then they'll do a lot less damage, all right? And so that plays in well, especially when you're in there with mobs, especially when you're playing a squishy character and you get in a pinch, all right? And then my rogue has the ability to tear down armor and bypass armor. In other words, if I can break your armor down 20, 40, 60% or whatever, okay, and then I can bypass whatever's left, essentially I'm passing my damage through your armor unchecked as if it's not there, all right? And that's crucial to this build, at least as far as putting up the good numbers, okay? We'll get into that in a minute. But overall, I want my party to weaken enemies and break down their armor and obviously make them take more damage. Like you have Blessed Blades with Cassandra, and as long as your behaviors are set right, she should essentially always be at your side. That's another thing I'll get into in a second, is behaviors. I did change those from the last video. I had the awesome behavior experiment that was an absolute failure. Once I got around the level 10, 11 range, it was yeah, it was not working. I found my party members, especially when things went bad, were standing around doing nothing and stuff like that, and ran into some difficulties. It was good in my head. It sounded good in my head, looked good on paper, but in the works, it wasn't working, okay? And if you saw my last video, essentially what it was is I pointed Cassandra in a direction, and I had the whole team follow Cassandra. But without my lead, the whole team was just kind of standing there with their thumbs up their butts, essentially, all right? And so I went back to my old behaviors, which work like a charm, and they still do. They work just fine. And that's essentially is that my character is set to follow the controlled character. So should I switch to someone else, my character will follow that lead, right? Everyone else in the party follows my named character. Not the controlled character, but my actual named character. And you'll see that here. I'm actually going to set some party members that I never use. I'm going to set some of their stats. I set everyone's mana, stamina, reserve to 0, right? But we'll get everybody to follow me. That's my actual named character, Shemi, okay? And we'll set the whole party like that. And as long as Cassandra is following my lead, okay, then the rest of the party's gonna follow suit, so to speak. And then for some reason with my main character following the controlled character, even if my main character gets knocked out, of course that never happens, right? But should my main character get knocked out, and I either by default or consciously switch to another party member, everyone still follows along. They do their job. Even if my main character is knocked out, for some reason they still do their thing. Whereas when I had them all following Cassandra, it seems like they would all just stop and go, well, what the hell happened? Now that our leader's gone, we don't know what to do. It was weird. But anyway, these behaviors allow me to not have to really ever go into the tactics menu. You'll see if you've watched my Let's Play, or if you've watched in my other videos, that I like a no-pause style of gameplay. Essentially, other than drinking a potion, like a regen potion, or throwing a grenade, I don't want to go into the tactical menu at all. I want to trust that my party members do their job. My mages should cast their barrier. My tanks should tank, draw all the hate, right? And my characters, well, is just going to do what my character does. Just run around and, you know, dish out the pain. That's how I like to play. And so I'm going to throw in this Ferelden Frostback, who at least early on was one of the more annoying dragons, especially because of her Mother of the Year award when she calls in all of her babies to die for her. Real bitch, as far as that's concerned. But she was a little annoying. So we came here at level 12, because that's fair. She levels up to 13, so we caught her right there, you know, level playing field, so to speak. Nightmare, friendly fire, active, and see what we could do. And I found that in my build so far, even what's it called, evade, or, you know, the little leaping ability, the dodge ability that the rogue has, it's actually almost more effective than combat roll is with the warriors. It lets you get out of there. I mean, you can cover some ground, right? Check it out. And I swear I even took that hit, but I didn't take any damage. So essentially, I think there's if there's not invincibility frames, it shrinks your hitbox dramatically to where you're either not going to take a hit or you're going to take glancing damage that amounts to basically nothing. All right, so it's been really cool. It's kind of awkward because I have to put it on a secondary button because my primaries are stealth, twin fangs, flank attack, and of course you know, throwing knives up there at the top. And so I have to go into my secondary tree. It's kind of odd when I have to dodge to remember left trigger, right button, you know, type of thing. But once it becomes habit, it started to get pretty comfortable, and I was cool with it. Anyway, that's just how I play. All right, so anyway, the party is geared to essentially weaken enemies, all right, tear down their armor, make them take more damage, all right, and I'll get into how this works. All right, this is the gist of it. Now, you know, I'm no super min-maxer where I can get down to, well, if I do this, and this, I'll get 1 more point of damage after 14 seconds of DPS under these conditions. And okay, well, there's some calculations which are just, even if I could do them, I'm not going to bother, okay? But the basics of it, I did go look at the damage calculator, just kind of curiosity, because my main question was, do I want attack or do I want critical damage? What's better, okay? And attack is essentially your base damage, but it comes into the calculations towards the end, all right? And so I was like, well, is that better or worse or whatever? And you have to look at available numbers from equivalent tier materials when you're crafting. Like, if I take a tier 2 material, what's it going to give me in attack and what's it going to give me in critical damage? Well, critical damage, essentially, the only downside to that is if you're not pulling off criticals all the time, then essentially your overall net DPS ceiling is going to be lower, all right? Because if you're not pulling criticals off basically every time you hit, then that critical damage buff isn't coming into play. But if you're pulling off criticals all the time, especially when it matters, especially like a rogue coming in and out of stealth, well, this build is designed to be in stealth shit all the time, right? And so that critical modifier is going to come into play a lot. And this is essentially how it works, all right? I'll give you the damage calculator in a nutshell. Is you take the damage of your weapon, all right? And then you add critical damage, you add flanking damage, you add guard damage and barrier damage, all right? And then you subtract your opponent's armor, all right? And then that gives you your net number. And after your net number, then you multiply that by abilities, okay? And we'll get into this in a second. At least in theory, this sounds really good. And I don't have all the skills and all the equipment, ideal stuff that I have in mind right now to really put this into play and see what kind of numbers I can really come up with. But we'll see by the time we get to the level 20 video, all right? But as far as a core build, this is working here, so I'm pleased to give you guys this. Take it for what it's worth. If it gives you some ideas, great. Okay, but essentially, what I want to do is, considering every character starts with a plus 40% critical damage bonus, and you get a plus 25% flanking damage bonus built in, all characters, all right? Then if I'm hitting criticals all the time, I have to assume that, let's just take, for example, to keep this simple, I have a weapon that does 100 damage, all right? And if I get an extra 40 and 25%, that's 65%, or 65% of 100 is actually 65. All right, so let's say my sword is doing 165 now, all right, after everything's factored in. We'll forget guard and barrier bonus because that affects just guard and barrier. We're not talking about actual damage to the enemy, all right? And then the enemy's armor, let's say it's 50, okay? And so now my weapon damage is 115. And then after that, you add in attack, all right? And so that's where your main stats come into play. Like if you're playing a rogue, it'd be dexterity. If you're playing a warrior, it'd be strength. With a mage, it'd be magic, all right? And then I think it's a half point of damage for every point of your primary stat that you have, above 10. Okay, and so you factor in that afterwards, and then after all that's said and done, that net number, you multiply that by any ability. Like, let's say, this is why I want my mages to be weakening or terrifying enemies to where they're taking bonus damage. Because once you have that net number, you add in your attack and everything else. So let's just take, let's see, I had 115 damage after armor and then throw in attack. Let's say I'm back up to 150, just for example. So let's say I'm pulling a net of 150. Then you add, say Solus has the enemies weakened and he has all of his passives in play. Enemies are taking another, what is it, like 15% damage. We'll throw 15% on top of that 150. And then if they're terrified also by Dorian, throw in that 15%. And then let's say you're sitting inside the Blessed Blades ring, cast by Cassandra, who's my favorite tank. Then that's another, what, 10 or 15% on top of that. And so then you take that net damage and you buff it up again by an extra anywhere from 30 to 45, 60%, whatever. All right, and that's kind of how the calculations work. Now, here's where my build comes into play. The whole, I guess you could say, synergy thing, where everything plays together, is before you throw in that ability modifier at the end from Solus's weakening and Dorian's terrifying and all that, what I want to do is I want to take that armor out of the equation. All right, so what I want to do is any of my party members that can crack armor, sunder it, as they would say, right? Reduce enemies' armor, all right? And then any passive in my rogue build that bypasses armor, which I believe there's two. There's one that bypasses like 50% if you're in stealth, which, like I say, with this build is all the time. Remember, synergy. Everything should play together. Those keywords should be popping up in all of your passives and abilities. If you have one keyword that you're building your party around, that keyword should pop up in all these skills and things that you're picking, right? Okay, so if I can bypass armor and stealth, and then I can get a base armor bypass bonus, I think it comes on the right side of the assassin tree, I can bypass essentially almost all the time, like 70% of all armor. That's not already broken down by other passives. Like there's another one that allows me to wreck an enemy's armor by like 20% with every critical hit, which should be just about every hit. Should be critical, right? And then I think Cassandra has another armor breaking bonus. I know Bull does because it comes with the two-handed tree. But whatever the case may be, if I can break down their armor and then what little's left, I can bypass that almost completely, then essentially their armor is taken out of that equation. And so what I get is my weapon damage, and I get my critical bonus on top of that, which I plan on building a lot of critical damage bonus into all of my gear, all right? Without any armor to check that off, then that raw number, which passes through almost unchecked, then it gets multiplied by ability modifiers too, like weakened enemies, terrified enemies, and all that. Blessed Blades, all right, you get it? And so I want a bigger starting number to multiply later, rather than a bigger net number. So I'm going to lean towards critical damage and see how that works. It's possible if I get bored, I may actually test the two. I may make a high attack weapon and then a high critical damage weapon, run with the same build and see which works out better. I think it boils down to build too. Centered on specifically breaking through armor. Notice that was on Nightmare and Friendly Fire, by the way. Breaking through armor and whatever armor's left, taking that raw damage and multiplying even that. That's how this party's built, right? So everything should play into that synergy. So if I see a passive or an ability that says they can break down, tear down an enemy, fear them, weaken them, or screw up their armor, I'm taking it with all my characters. And that's it. That is my party build. And so I build my party essentially as a body, all right? And each member of my party plays a role. Like one is the right arm, one is the left arm, one is the right leg, one is the left leg. No one of my party members is the whole body. Each one assigns is assigned their specific task and should do that exceptionally well. All right, now I'm going to cover my build here that we just went through on the dragon here at level 12. This is where I was at that point. Show you the team I was running with, skills I had. Remember, Cassandra, keeping in line with that whole line of thinking, Cassandra has Challenge and Warcry and Shield Wall favorited. She should pick those before anything else. If she has the stamina to cast those, that's what she should do. If I have her doing anything else like Blessed Blades and stuff like that, I need to give her something to buff her stamina regen. And she should be good to go. The whole point is to have them able to spam their stuff. Maximum cooldown with the strongest barriers possible. That's what I want my mages to have. Offense essentially comes second. They've got a high fire rate with those staves anyway. They lay down their share of pain with their staves, and then they throw in their support buffs, like Weakening, Terrify, what have you, all right? And I think Vivian even has a passive to allow you to do more damage or take less damage in her tree somewhere that's always active. But whatever the case, all right? They should support, and damage kind of comes second. Do their role. Anything else is just icing on the cake, okay? Here was the equipment we were using at the time. Some stuff I've crafted, a lot of it I've just found. I took the best of what I had available, threw in a few accessories like some gauntlets or leggings if I had a schematic for it. That type of thing. We're going to fight a fire dragon, so give them a little fire resistance. That's cool. Never hurts to have an edge like that. But didn't go out of my way to craft a whole bunch of specific stuff. And they'll wear this for a while. In fact, I think, at the time of this video, at level 15, I think they're still wearing all this stuff, it is what it is. I think the build should carry it. Equipment will play into that, but I usually really get into that later game in most RPGs. I really start finalizing equipment. Like, I'm not going to put a whole bunch of thought into crafting some gears, sweat for hours over it, when I'm going to throw that piece of gear away in about 5 minutes anyway. Why put 5 hours of effort into a sword that's only going to be usable for about the next level or two? I'll just find something in between, and then when I get to the point where things really start to bog down in an RPG, then I'll start to craft that in-game item, that in-game set of armor, that in-game weapon or whatever. And that's kind of how I roll. But anyway, there you have it. All right, and so that is our build at 15. I hope that helped. If there's any questions, please use that comment section below. If there's anything I left out, anything you want me to clarify, or anything you want to argue about, cool, that's cool. Use the comment section below. I really appreciate you watching. You guys take care. Want to subscribe, click that button over my head, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.